Insight and awareness, spiritual explorer. Soul intuitive, emotional and spiritual mentor and award-winning author, Lorraine Nylon.
Welcome, explorers. Today's guest is Dr. Pat Boulogne. She's a certified medical practitioner, a coach, chiropractor, speaker, and an international bestseller. Her book is titled, Why Are You Sick, Fat and Tired? Tell us about your book and what is it about and why did you write it?
Well, it was my observation when I was in practice that a lot of people, when I gave them that, the medical version of questionnaires would leave portions of the questionnaire blank. And so I would ask them, I go, why did you leave it blank? And they would come up with says like I had no clue what they're asking me. And so then I would have to explain a couple of the questions. So someone told me one time that I was going to write a book. And I said, I don't think so. And I retired, when I was like way back in, when I was like 55 or something like that. And so I just went, no way. And then I woke up one night and I said, I'm going to write a book. And what I realized is that when I sold my practice, semi-retired, moved to Boston, and I walked around Boston, I saw so many people sick that didn't know it.
Yeah.
Now I was on Cape Cod, where there weren't, you didn't have that dense population, but I was downtown and I could see the same people every day. And I would ask them, wow, are you okay? It's like there's no one home. And I would write about the same time, besides that observation, as I read an article by the CDC. I always finally say when they were telling the truth. And they tested the blood and urine of 2,500 people plus in the United States. How could it be that 2,500 plus people in the United States that didn't live under the same ecosystem, same house, ended up having like 212 potentially dangerous chemicals in the blood and urine? How is that possible? Unless they had environmental exposure, they were having exposure by the things that they, the foods that they ate, the water that they drank, the cleaning fluids that they used, the gardening stuff that they did. And it's just like, it really annoyed me. So I decided to take that wisdom that I had, start piecing the puzzle together and write a book. And so when I wrote my book, it was a book of questions. Somebody left me a scathing review that it was one question. I said, no, it's not. It's over 300. And they're short chapters for each of the organ systems in the body. So it's easy to answer. So you don't ever feel overwhelmed by doing it. When I said that 300, it was like, oh my God, how do I do that? And so it's broken.
So your book is set up that people can go through it and work out their own.
Right, and it's a book of questions. So it's a guidebook, a workbook, and an advocating tool to find out exactly where to start your health journey, where you need attention in your health now, not later when you're in crisis. You want to know beforehand, and that way you can put that fire out, so the fire doesn't get stoked. You can go into a smolder, and you can do things to improve your health, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and financially.
If we go back 20 or 30 years ago and we fast forward now, would you say generally our health has declined?
Absolutely.
Right.
And not only that, by the year 2030, 50% of the population is destined to have, some chronic illness or disease and have that diagnosis. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be the 50%. And you get the enormity of that if I'm talking on, public stage about high performance health. And I'm asking people to all stand up and every other person sits down and have them look around the room and say, that's your mother, that's your father, that's your family, and it's just like, and when you hit a certain age, because people didn't pay attention and things accumulate. So it isn't like one exposure to drinking water out of a plastic bottle that's going to do you in. It's the continual use of it because it's convenient.
Yes.
It's the continual use of, using chemicals on your body. 65% of what you put on your body gets absorbed into your body. That's the problem, and so it's the what's being added on it. And so if you think about a Swiss watch, actually, each of the pieces of those cogwheels have got to work exactly together. in order for it to work properly. Our body's the same way, and it has a tendency to, need specific things in order for it to function. Like it needs hydration. So many people are dehydrated. And when you look at, like, what are those simple things I can do right now? Because if you knew what to do to be healthy, would you do it? It's just like you got to ask
Actually,
yourself.
you know what? The reality is sometimes we do know what we shouldn't be doing, and we still do it. Like we do all have bad habits. We've got lazy, and convenience often wins out from our own wisdom. Like sometimes we know we're doing the wrong thing by ourselves, and we keep doing it.
Well, you have to ask yourself, why do you do that? And a lot of times when people do, they've learned those poor habits from childhood. They've watched their family do it. And a lot of people don't make that paradigm shift of like, I've got to do something different. Because if you don't do something different, you're going to die of the same thing that your parents and your grandparents died from. And even worse now, the food chain in the United States and a lot of around the world is very different. You've got chemicals that are being sprayed on it, and
Yeah.
your body doesn't have that access. Like when you ingest something, and if you damage your gut, then what happens is every time that you have food, it seeps out into the blood, before it should. And then it has to go to the liver, and the liver's got to detox it. The liver does never detox. You never, ever, ever detox the liver. And then, because you don't want to purge that organ. But
Right.
if you're
Okay.
looking at that, and then when the liver gets overwhelmed, because it keeps on trying to kick it out, because it doesn't want those toxins in your body, because that's what it's supposed to do, is put them into your intestinal tract. Or if they're small enough, they go to the kidney, to the bladder, then go to the toilet. But if they aren't, it's going to keep on recycling that. And when they keep on recycling that and they can't do it anymore and it becomes overwhelmed, they get stored in blood, brain, bone, and fat.
Right.
So if you look at every fat cell in your body, whether you're skinny or big, is an endocrine organ. So you have this whole hormonal thing going on, and food affects you hormonally. Every bite that you're eating, you're either fixing something or you're breaking it down. And so when you become more aware of your health and the consequences of that, because I had somebody who gave me a book review, and she said the biggest thing when they interviewed me on their show, the biggest thing was that she walked away with is awareness of your health. And that's priceless. When you have that awareness, you're like, if I keep on doing this, I'm probably not going to see my grandkids.
Yeah.
I might end up with something more significant than what's really going on. People want to know. Then they go like, well, why did I get sick? Like, where have you been? And looking at those pieces of the puzzle in one's house, and also looking at the pieces of the puzzle, like, outside your house and your environment, when you start reading labels. I always love the moment when I'm coaching my clients and they're looking at, the back of a label that we're looking at that day, and they're just saying like, whoa, I can't pronounce any of these words. Then you shouldn't eat them.
Yeah.
And, not only that, it's just like, look up the side effects. If you can't pronounce them, who cares? What is matter is, what do those things do? What are the side effects of those things that you're ingesting into your body? That's what matters. And when you look at that, somebody said to me like, wow, how could, it's like, it's supposed to be fresh lemon juice, but it has sodium dioxide in it. Or, a guy that says, I'm trying to lose weight. Well, there was hidden sugars in every one of his weight loss shakes that he ever bought. And so it's like, how do
Yeah.
you expect to lose weight? And if you want to lose weight, you've got to, your body's just not going to take that weight and dump it off, because it has to be able to process it. And if it doesn't have the ability to do that, then it's going to take you a lot longer to lose that weight, because you got to get yourself healthy first. And you've got to be able, like, if you look at your body as a fine-tune, a sanctuary, a fine-tune machine, I always ask the question, so since we're talking about bodies, are you a jalopy? Are you driving a jalopy? Are you driving a Mustang? Or are you driving a Ferrari? I like Ferraris because they're fast cars, but and they're high maintenance. People go like, oh, like when they ever call women high maintenance, oh, you're high maintenance. You haven't seen anything yet until you go out and start going into your pocket for something that you didn't take care of, that you had an opportunity to take care of before, and you didn't do it.
Yeah.
A minimum of $19,000 is spent on type 2 diabetes alone.
Yeah.
If not more now. And that statistic was actually about 5 years ago. So when you're looking at those pieces of the puzzle, you've got to know how to do that. So I always ask, jalopy, Mustang or Ferrari. Now, what's important is that not putting the cart before the horse, because if the cart is before the horse, and you try to get in the cart and drive it, you have nothing to pull it because horses don't push. And if you do get the cart and you have the horse in front of it and you attach it, then you got to ask yourself I've never been horseback riding before. I have no clue what horses do, but you're trying to drive it anyway. You got to have the right pieces of the puzzle and the equipment in order to be able to do that. So you have to be able to think that one out a little bit more. And I'm going to give you just an example about the Ferrari is that I was in Essex, England, and I was with a boyfriend and we were visiting friends of his, and this guy just got a brand new Ferrari. And he asked me if I ever drove one before. I said, no, but I'd love to. And he goes, let's go. And so we jumped into his car. He's never talked to me ever since then. He jumped into his car and we're going, we started because we were driving forward. So I didn't have to worry about reverse, or else I would have known that the brake paddles were on the wheel. And we're coming up to this curve and he's going, of course I'm on the other side of the road too for myself. And he said, you might want to slow down. This is a little bit of a sharp curve. And I said, well, where are the brakes? And it never occurred to me or him to tell me, explain it. You've got to know what to do with the car, right?
Yeah.
And so he said they're in the steering wheel. The brake pedals are in the steering wheel. So I only hit one of them. And when I hit one of them, it locked the one wheel up, and then the car spun out, and I took off the back side of that car from the driver's side door to the back into the panel.
And this is the first time you've met this guy.
Yeah.
No.
And so I just said to him, I'm so sorry. I go, and I can't afford to pay you to fix your car. I said, just got out of school. I mean, literally, I was like, I didn't have like two nickels to rub together almost. And so, he just said, it's okay. It's okay. He said, we have insurance anyway. I just can't imagine the repair bill for that car.
No.
And we pulled in, and he told his wife, and she said, I said, I feel so bad. And she said, it's the second time you did something with that car since you got it. Maybe it's a sign, but he was so proud of that car. But you have to be able to maintain those cars. It costs you a lot of money, and it costs you a lot of time and energy. Right. And
I think too, the big point there is that you do need really good information. Like if you knew when you started the car where the brakes were, which is very good information to have,
yes.
then you've got somewhere to go. So what are people in their own awareness of themselves lacking that's causing us all so much trouble? What is it you wish everybody knew?
I wish everybody knew a little more research, and they didn't take things at face value, and that they did the research, and they didn't get it from Google. They got it from PubMed, or they got it from Lancet. They got it from the British, medical journal. They got it from a known, recognized source for specific information, especially PubMed, because PubMed has publications on a wide range, whereas the New England Journal of Medicine and the British Journal of Medicine might be a little bit more narrow in their framework. They might be a little bit more in their box and not outside their box for some of the things that they actually write articles on and publish. But I wish that people had asked questions like, why? Why is that? And how does that apply to me? And why is it so important for me to go along with this? And if I don't, what happens then? Because there's a lot of times with self-fulfilling prophecy that they have gone into, and they have done studies on this, where they've gone and, people were told that they were going to, sorry, there's nothing we can do. We estimate that you have about 6 weeks to 6 months to live. And they usually die between 6 weeks and 6 months, except for the people who are strong character and strong mind going, see you later, and they start going, what else can I do? Because there's always something that you can do. There's always a solution on some level to make your life better and to improve your life, so that you can keep moving forward in a fashion that gets you unstuck, and that is safer, quicker, and with simpler solutions. I mean, it's just that's important to research out. So I would just say, having that ability, or if you don't know who, because I always say community is very important. You've got to be with a community that's a knowledge-based community. And that supports you in that knowledge-based community. That way you can heal those in front of you, behind you, and all around you. And you can spread that type of, because communities know other communities. And so then you're in the same boat, going in the same direction, all using the same oars.
Right. And I read in your stuff, what is the Grim Reaper syndrome?
Well, the Grim Reaper is, we all have signs and symptoms that we don't pay attention to, and we hope that they go away, and they don't. And so a lot of times, women, they always, that they have, a lot of women have their gallbladder out. So, and the purpose of the gallbladder is to emulsify fats, and it works with the liver in order to do it. You need that bile in your stomach so you don't burn a hole through it. It's there for a good reason. But a lot of people don't have, like they don't pay attention to those signs and symptoms. They're like, oh, when I eat fried food now, I really can't eat it anymore, but I love it, and so if I'm going to have it, then, it's just like I'm always paying for it 2 or 3 days down the line. Why would you do that? Number one. And, because that you're having a bad reaction to it, but something else is going on below the surface. It's like an iceberg. You don't know the bottom of it. They didn't know when the Titanic nailed that iceberg that they were going to sink, or it was even there. They thought they were far enough away from it, but it sliced a huge hole in the side of a ship that allegedly was never going to sink, and sunk, kerplunk. But the point is that it's true. In looking at the things that are around us, we have to be able to make better decisions. So if you're giving that better knowledge, you have an opportunity to assess that knowledge, kind of like a checklist, and then be able to make better decisions in moving forward and doing that. So that part of the Grim Reaper syndrome is like, don't let it go by. Suddenly at 40, 50, you get, like you have floaters in your eyes. In Chinese medicine, the clear one means that it's all about the liver, and the dark one means that it relates back to the kidney meridian.
Right.
So you kind of like, I go, wow, your eyes are here and your kidney, liver are over here and over here. It's just like, how does that relate? I mean, it's the same thing for your ears too. They're liver and kidney issues. So there's certain things like your ringing of your ear, if it's high pitched or low pitched, or if it sounds like a train, it means something in Chinese medicine. And going back, you're going like, what do I need to tonify? What organ system needs to pay attention? Do I need to pay attention to as a practitioner, and then help that person with? So when you have signs and symptoms, they're there for a reason. Pain is a sign and symptom. It's not a lifestyle.
Yeah, that's a good one. Because I know a lot of people that have got so used to pain. Well, they actually say, I do not remember what it's like to wake up without my pain. So, but they just live with it. They just, it becomes your normal. And I think we've accepted more and more as we've gone along that we've included in what we class as normal, but it's not normal.
No, it's not. And they tell you it is, though. They go, oh, it's, you're getting older. It's like when I had a fall going out of a store and went through a window. And next day when I was in the hospital, because I still had a major headache because I head slammed into cement, I said, I'm talking to this guy, and he said, well, it's your age, and I just stood up and went, excuse me, what does my age have to do with it? Because we're talking about CAT scans. So when you get a CAT scan, one shot of a CAT scan is worth 100 x-rays.
Yeah.
And that's the dose, the radiation dose of 100 x-rays. So I said to him, because I was just past the age of 62 or 65 or something like that when that happened. And I said to him, so 8 months ago, when I wasn't that age, you would have like skipped over it. And I said, and I don't eat a typical American diet. And so, I said to him, I don't think that, I said, I'm not going to do it. I said, and my question to him, like, you got to learn to ask questions. Well, would your diagnosis change? No. And I said, so we're still at grade 1 concussion. Great. And I said, I'll see you later, and, and I said, if it continues, I'll be back. I know how to drive myself here. And so it's just like knowing those things that, are, prevalent, those signs and symptoms, you've got to pay attention to them and do something about it early, because a lot of times by the time that people get to something, it's too late.
Yeah.
Like I had a girlfriend that said, I don't understand why I have gas and bloating. And I said, you eat like crap. I said, what do you expect? And she said, well, what is it that I eat that's so bad? I said, it's not what you eat, it's how you combine your foods. Because when you chemically combine your foods better, and all food are chemical, so to speak, not in the sense of like they're bad for you, but like if you're having, scrambled eggs, right, and you're having grilled tomatoes, and you got your protein and your carbohydrate, and then you're having, and it's cooked in a little bit of fat, so you've got a perfect protein, so to speak. And as I said, but when you sit there, then you mix orange juice with it. Are you crazy? And I said, orange juice is so high in fructose and glucose, you just don't, and it cuts your digestion when something's that sweet, and then you don't feel good for the rest of the day because it sets the stage for how you eat. So you're feeding your sanctuary. You need to, and you have to just that awareness of, because there's food combining charts on Google. You don't need to get one from me. You can go on Google and Google food combining charts and pick one that works for you. And then just start piecing your foods together like that, so that you have you can start having better outcomes with just food choices. It's big.
Yeah, it is big. Going back to that original conversation, part of the conversation of, put it simply, if your grandmother doesn't know what it is, don't eat it. That was one of the rules I was told once, and it always sort of stuck with me, because I was like, well, all the packet things we buy and the bottled stuff for dressing things up, it's all just chemical based. So, and we've become conditioned,
well, if you ever want to lose,
to think that's food.
Right, it's not. And if you ever use like any sugar substitutes, or salt substitutes, stop using them. Use real food. I mean, it's just like food is medicine. And, it's just like they have shown, there's studies that show that when you're using, like alternative sugars, that it actually tricks your gut into thinking that it's starving. And so, and it's really hard to lose weight when you're using those things too. So it's just really paying attention to, like, going back to basics, for instance, and being, like the thing that your grandmother told you. My grandmother's never always said, if you can't, if you have too many ingredients in a meal, it ruins it.
Yeah.
And if you ever like looked at something, on like a Pop-Tart, those are horrible for you. There is nothing in that that even resembles food, except for the one word, like if you had raspberry or whatever the fruit it is, and it's just like, it's like fruit with fructose, and in the United States, the GMO corn is like everywhere, and soy. You have to take a look at like what the quality of the food is, and like, and then take the food that is better for you and eat that food, and make a commitment to that. You have to make a commitment to your health. You pay now or you pay later. I'd rather pay now and have a good time.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what are the 5 things that we can all do that will help us? Give us 5 of the best things that we can do to help ourselves.
The first thing, in the definition of health is all your organs functioning all the time. That's what Merriam-Webster's dictionary says. And the World Health Organization says it's not merely the absence of disease or infirmities. And they even expanded that definition back in the 80s. They haven't done anything since then. So, and understanding what the 5 pillars of health are: nutrition, and diet under one heading, they feed off each other. Then exercise, and then sleep, and then positive mental attitude, and then a proper posture. Those 5 things. One of them would be hydration.
Yeah.
And being absolutely hydrated. You need it for every function of your body. And the amount that water that you need to have, if you don't like water, drink it out of a straw. If it makes you feel icky in your stomach, then drink it out of a straw. And if you don't like it, put some lemon juice in it. So hydration is the biggest thing. Second thing is to move. If you don't move, my second patient was a 92-year-old woman who I couldn't figure out why the heck she would ever come to see a student chiropractor. But she was the grandmother of my first patient. And so she just said that she wanted to finish, crocheting her Afghan because her neck was bothering her, which she actually ended up doing. But I asked her what she did for exercise, and she took her Dixie cup out and she watered 150 of her little plants in the backyard.
Right.
And because she said it was too dangerous to walk around, the neighborhood was churning, and she didn't want to expose herself walking down the street. So she just took her Dixie cup from the kitchen and walked out in the backyard, and and did her 150 plants. And she said 100. I thought she was really going to say, like, maybe I have 5 of them, but she goes, "Oh, I have 150 of them." She was so proud of that fact. So you got to move, because if you don't move, you're going to die. you know and the third thing is you've got to get enough sleep. And taking naps are cool. And so, but you don't want a nap to last more than 30 minutes. You want a nap to be under 30 minutes, or else you start going into the deeper phase of sleep. And if you have a hard time falling asleep, stop eating 4 hours before you go to bed.
Right.
And don't drink any water before you go to bed, at least for 2 hours before you go to bed. And then, if you have, before you go to sleep, you can take like a little, like, glass, that's about this size here, like something you would just put, that those little yogurts come in,
Yeah.
about that size, that's maybe like 3-4 ounces, you know, and then, just put a little bit of lemon juice in, because it will help calm the liver and calm your stomach. That's a good thing. And have a dark room, for that sleep part of it. And the positive mental attitude is huge, because what we tell ourselves, when our self-talk, you have to be able to control your thoughts. And it's essential and it's crucial to have that and master them. Because what happens is if we start to do something and we say, "Oh, I'm not good enough to do that," or it's just like, that's better for somebody else. So that mindset is really, really important. And doing those affirmations. So you have a lizard brain that tells you it's the for survival, like the saber-toothed tiger. And then you have the mammalian brain, and the mammalian brain is all about emotion, whether it's good or bad. And the lizard brain is talking to the mammalian brain saying, "Remember that time?" But the conscious brain says the affirmations. "I am healthy. I am vital. I am an active, successful human being. On this day, whatever it is that you want to say, you can make it up yourself, but just have it in first person. And if you say it when the first thing you get up in the morning, it's easier to hit the ground on a positive note moving forward.
That makes a big difference, actually.
And secondly, and the last thing, the final thing is, oh, it does. And like, even at the end of the day, or if you have a bad thought that comes in for whatever reason, you can just say, "Stop," and push it away. Whether it's you do it physically or just in your mind, push it away. And finally, the posture. I see people with the worst posture I've ever seen in such a long time. I had a kid last year that I examined in the doctor's office that, couldn't bend over and touch his fingers past his knees.
Oh,
And I'm going like, wow, there's something wrong here. Sitting in front of the computer way too long, you've got to be able to move, and you have to have good posture. When you go into good posture, it's almost like your body's exercising all on its own, so that it can keep the spine up and straight. And when you have good posture and not tucked in, then it's easier for you to digest your foods,
right.
and to make that limit. And that hydration, drink 16 ounces of water when you first get up in the morning. That's an easy thing to do. Your body will love you, and every organ in your body will love you for just doing that one thing. And so, those are like, just like, basics of that. Yeah. And when, and if something happens, like if you can't sleep, get up and ask yourself this one thing. It's just like, is there anything I can do about that? And if the answer is yes, turn the lights on, get up and do it, and then get back to your bed and say, "Now I'm going to go to sleep." I give myself permission to go to sleep. And then it's done. It's over. If it's something that you can't do anything about, then dictate it into your telephone, which you should have on airplane mode when you're sleeping anyway, because of the electromagnetic energy that is released by your telephones. It's an important thing to be able to create that space that you are not being bombarded with toxins in your system, whether it is electromagnetic or it's food that you eat, thoughts that you're thinking, because we have toxic thoughts, and those other pieces of the puzzle that we already talked about.
So how impacting are toxic thoughts? And if you've suffered from trauma, how does that impact your health?
Trauma is inflammation. The first trauma that people get usually is on the birthing process. 9 out of 10 children have some type of cervical damage. So you got to think about it. After the birthing process, they have a little bit of inflammation in their neck, because that's, or how they're torqued and pulled out of the womb. That's one of the problem with that. And thoughts are essential because they can undo up to 7 times what you've done to correct for trauma. Like, and that trauma can also include like going grocery shopping and always carrying groceries on the right side. For me, it was always working on the left-hand side of the table when I was adjusting people as a chiropractor. And, and you look at things that are habitual for you that are just easier for you to do. And I learned to do the left side of the table because the room was so small that I was in. I just put the table up to the wall, and I just always worked off of one side until I had a bigger office and I could move around. I'm 6 feet tall, 5'12", and the and so that piece of the puzzle, is important to realize. And a lot of people, like, women are more prone to be over worry warts, than men are. And, they say, I'm sorry way too much, as opposed to just fixing the problem. They're always worried that something else is going on, which in Chinese medicine weakens your ability to digest. And we all know when we've been mad, at somebody, or we had an argument, by food, or before you went to sleep at night, you don't sleep. Yeah. Give yourself peace of mind, and whatever happened during the daytime, allow it to be until you get up the next morning, so that you can address it with a clearer mind, in clearer spirit, and able to move forward.
Yeah, that's good advice. So I'm going to ask you the big question that we have for all our guests. What do you think humanity needs to acknowledge and understand for us to evolve?
I think we need to understand tolerance with common sense.
Tolerance with common sense. Yeah, we have lost common sense, haven't we? It's not common anymore.
It's not common at all. It's just that we have to change uncommon sense or common sense, because there's things that just don't fit. I mean, if it's, a round hole, in a square peg, it says a square peg is not going to go into a round hole, but they have people believing that it does.
Yeah.
And so people need to get back and get in touch with themselves, get in their own vibe, and ask themselves, wow, this just does not make sense. So what does make sense?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it's like, for a lot of people, it's a huge challenge because they watch way too much TV, and what they're given is they're being led down a path. And it's just like, when you do that, at some point in time when you first started that, everyone's going, oh, I don't think so. This doesn't make sense to me. And when something doesn't make sense to me, I use my mouth, I use my voice, and I talk about it. But I want to make sense of it and put it in a good place so that it's something that is safer for people to do, quicker, and with a simpler solution is my goal. My goal is to help, someone realize their full human potential so that they can go out and make the impact that they promised the Almighty that they would do, or whoever you believe in. That when they came to this planet, we all have a mission, we all have a passion, and if we follow that passion, we all benefit from it.
That's true.
And so, I want to just release somebody into I go, now that we fix this, go out and make your impact, make me proud, and go out and do it. And I love seeing people do things that they never, ever, ever thought that they would do.
Yeah.
And it's great, especially when they succeed. And if they don't succeed, you try again. You don't give up.
Yeah, that's right. And it is basically coming back to even that common sense with yourself. There's so much around us that is conditioning and influencing us. So basically, so they can make a profit. If we look at how our food is being disrupted, it's so a company can make a profit. But we've fallen into the trap, and we haven't used our own common sense and gone, that chemical didn't grow off a tree. It didn't, so it's not healthy for me. Why am I doing this? But we've become conditioned by what is influencing us. So common sense is to understand yourself better.
Right. And when you understand yourself, you trust yourself. And a lot of people don't trust their own judgment.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's a big point.
It is. It's just and it's something to get over, because you have to be able to ask. When you ask the wrong question, you're basing your action on a wrong answer.
Yeah.
So having common sense, and knowing how to ask the right question, which I help clients do all the time, gives them an opportunity to go down that checklist and going, okay, then if this happens, then my choices are to do this, 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 or this. and this makes no sense also. That's out of the way. And then you can tether it down to what really, suits you and what's really good for you, as opposed to what's good for somebody else.
Yeah. And I think I love what
Whatever
you
it
just said
is.
then. And I think for people is that one of the fundamental misconceptions they have is their choices don't matter, but their choice on everything actually matters for how they're going
Right.
to
But
experience
right.
their life.
Change happens with, let's look at, 10 years ago, nobody was eating organic, or they were, but they didn't really, people like, oh, you're crazy. There's no difference between that,
Mm.
and then, you have like that fundamental shift happen, and people are looking at like, grass-fed butter that's finished grass-fed. Not because a lot of times grass-fed is fine, but just before they go to market, they give them regular corn or wheat or whatever it is as feed, so it makes them fluffed up,
Right.
and the animal get larger. So, it's just like when you make a decision about something, you're going like, I don't know if this is the right decision. If you don't know it, then find somebody who has the knowledge to be able to answer that question. Anybody who's listening, I'm going to welcome you to, come out and find out more about me, and have a conversation with me. And that, because I want to see you excel. And when you thrive, we all thrive.
Yeah, that's true. All right. I think it's time to play Flip the Book. So would you like to pick book 1, 2, or 3? And that
3.
is what I refer to as the big book. It's your insight and awareness. So you have 1 to 430 pages to pick from. What would you like?
I would pick the
111. It's always a mystery to see what's going to come up.
Well, I've been seeing the number a lot lately, so we're going to see what the universe. Yeah, I've been seeing it everywhere.
Have you?
I looked at my watch. Today is 111. Yesterday, something.
Oh, there you go. You get runs on it. So you have 7 paragraphs to choose from. Which one would you like?
The third one.
Okay, so this is under the chapter of separation from your awareness of your soul. You can use your unresolved emotions as an excuse to justify your own destructive behavior towards your soul and others. When you justify and excuse your emotional behaviors, you exist separated from your awareness of your soul. You can ignore how you utilize your freedom of choice and how you fight your awareness of your soul's consciousness for control. I think what you do is try to help people deal with it.
Well, there's a technique that I do. Is the initials for it. They've changed the meaning of what those initials mean on and off throughout the years. But I've been doing this technique since like 19 something, like 89 or something like that, or 90 or something, right around there. And it's called NET. And NET takes a look at what you're handling emotionally in your ecosystem, and it looks at where you first had that experience. So if you've been abandoned, or if you've been beaten, or if you were sexually abused, or if you have, had something happen to you, you had a car accident, you had a ski accident, sometimes those events are buried somewhere in your body. So anytime that you get to near that same emotion again, you have the same experience again. That's the mammalian brain firing off, going like, oh, that looks like, and every time I meet a man that has a mustache, they never turn out to be the good guy, and so therefore men with facial hair are, they're off limits. And, just as an extreme example, the piece of that is that being able to go back and step in time and find out what it is the emotion that keeps on coming up again and again and again, that makes you stay in Newtonian time and not have an exponential life, is to go in and find out, so that you can be bigger than your biggest excuse, so that you can squash that. So it isn't like it didn't happen, but how you react to it. So it's a memory and not something that you're reactive to. That's huge. That's a huge shift for a lot of people, because that in and of itself improves people's health, their mindset, and their well-being, for sure. And then when they have other things that come up like that, they don't have that they don't have that piece of the puzzle that keeps on firing at them, so when you own, then you can easily walk in and have similar situations go on around you, and you're not affected by them. And your soul and your spirit and your body are protected energetically. And that's, so I was like, when you're looking at like, how to be bigger than your biggest excuse, things always go down to three things: time, energy, and money. No matter what the excuse is, it's just like, so what is it? Like, what is it that's preventing you from having your best life ever? And why don't you want your best life ever? And if there's an emotional component to that, let's find out what that is, work through it so you can have the breakthrough that you deserve, and then you can make the impact and have the life that you love more consistently, every day.
And it's interesting because I find a lot of people now want that instant gratification, but actually to deal with your emotions and those really stored belief systems and traumas and fears, etc., you have to do the work. And it's not as hard as it sounds if you lean into it and you commit to it. But we want it fixed, and we want it fixed yesterday. And it doesn't work that way. That just keeps us on the loop of moving around. It's interesting how much we shy away from our emotions. Unresolved emotions are what are affecting you and making you feel bad about yourself and not good enough, and all those belief systems that hold you trapped in your own monotony, really.
Right. And so when you have, I had a woman who was triggered when I was doing this work, the NET work on her. When I was working on her, there's a dog barking outside the window, and she freaked out. She literally was off the table in a New York nanosecond. And I said, "What's going on?" And she just goes like, "It's the dog. It's the dog." She was, when somebody gets that kind of irrational part, it's the dog. It's the dog. And I said, "What about the dog?" I said, "Take a deep breath. Talk to me." And then it's just like there were things that triggered her, that what she came in for isn't exactly what we ended up doing. But what ended up coming from that is that someone molested her at some point in time, and she buried that emotion that went with that. And so when we were done, we took that reactivity portion of it, because she said, "I hate dogs." I mean, it was just like she was whipped up, and like she was very vocal about it. And so I, when and working with her and finding out, like, what was that, and is there a time before that when she left? She's Dr. Pat. She goes, "Thank you." She goes, "I never thought about that in so many years." And I said, "Now you don't have to think about it ever again. And if you do, you can just say, 'Oh, I know what that is,' and you can push it away into a safe place." And so I never saw her. And about 6 months after that, some guy came in my office with flowers. And so my staff immediately thought it was a new boyfriend. And he was stopping by to bring me flowers. And, she goes, "Hey, some guy's up there." I said, "Who you dating now?" I go, "First off, it's none of your business." And number two, I go, "Let me go find out who it is." So I walked up and just said, I introduced myself, and he goes, "Oh, Dr. Pat." He goes, "I've been meaning to do this for a long time." And he said, and the other day I just looked at these flowers, and I just like, I've got to go do this. And so I did it. And I said, "Well, they're really beautiful, but who are you?" Just, and I love flowers. So I go, it's a good choice. And so then he said to me, he said, "Thank you for giving me my wife back."
Oh.
And I went, "Who are you?" And then he told me who he was and how, and he said, "She's been so different since whatever the last time that you saw her." And I went, "Oh, I'm really glad to hear. I'm really, really glad to hear that, And I said, "Tell her I said hi." She goes, "She doesn't know I'm here." I said, "Then don't tell her I said hi. But you can tell her you ran into me at the grocery store and you're talking to this crazy chiropractor, this woman, and you said, 'Ask me where my office is at.'" I go, and you put two and two together. So it's just, I think, or you can say, "I think I ran into your chiropractor," and you saw the tall, dark hair, and, rather very witty.
Yeah.
And he just said, he goes, "Thank you very much." He goes, "You saved my life, and you saved hers too."
That's right.
And I just went out, because you never know what impact you're going to have when you're working with somebody, or that one phrase that you say to somebody that they carry that and they carry it through the rest of their life.
That's
Like
right.
some guy called me up one day, 15 years after I had left my practice. And he said, "Remember that time you told me not to eat sugar?" Well, there was a guy on 60 Minutes talking about sugar, and he said everything you used to say. That should have been you on 60 Minutes. And I went, who was it? He goes, I don't know, but I was listening to that. And I said, she told me that, back in 1989, that kind of thing. I went like, well, good. So don't eat sugar, and he didn't eat sugar, but his wife was very addicted to it, and he's doing very well with his health, and she has some major issues with it too. So, in doing things that are like, good for you, you have to always say like, what is my highest good? What is this for my highest good? That I need to do? Is it what part of my health needs more attention than that? On my website, there is and I'm trying to think of what actual page it's on, but if you go through it, on the bottom, there's a thing called the Wheel of Life guide. And if you grab that book, it will show you, it's an ebook, it will show you where you need to pay attention to yourself in your life right now. Is it more family? Is it more friends? Is it work? Where is that piece of the puzzle? And my health is healthteamnetwork.com, and it's downloadable. And it's, feel free to get it. It could be on the product page, but I wouldn't trust me on that one. Exactly. It's just like, I just got them putting that together and I move things around. So, feel free to look for it and grab it. It's something that would be very helpful.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you for your time, Dr. Pat, and I've enjoyed our conversation.
I loved our conversation. This was the best point of this week so far.